Welcome to the Pen Leader Podcast, where strategic leaders get straight to the topics, strengthening our awareness and sharpening our minds. The Pen Leader Podcast is produced by Roar, a production division of Mays & Associates Ltd. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Now here is your award-winning host, Dr. Shanda Gore.
And welcome back to the Pen Leader Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about service in action. And I am glad to have with me Mr. Kevin Mullan, who is the owner and founder of the KPM Consulting Company, which focuses on key metrics to improve donor engagement, retention, contributions, and establishing development of best practices. He's also the co-host of the 419 podcast and is the current president of Rotary Club of Toledo with more than 320 members. He has more than 20 years experience working with nonprofit sector. He has a bachelor's of mass communication at Miami University. And if you listen closely and you follow the Toledo Rockets, he's the voice of the Rockets. So welcome, Kevin Mullan.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So today we're going to be talking about that service. You know, you've done so much work in the nonprofit sector, but you're now a president overseeing a whole group of individuals who are putting service above self. Can you talk about the benefits of Rotary?
Absolutely. So I think that concept of service above self is really important. And when you think about, what makes our community move and what improves our community, it's when we focus on somebody other than ourselves, right? When we think about what can I do for my neighbor? What can I do for the community? What can I do for that person that I've never met before, but I know they've got a challenge that maybe I can solve? And when we focus on those things, incredible impact happens, but also like really strong relationships happen when you and I find ourselves in a park picking up trash together, or shoulder to shoulder serving food to hungry kids or folks in our community, or getting in a committee meeting room together and talking about grants and opportunities for us to fund projects in our community. When we put others first, we let down our guard, and I think that's where true, authentic partnerships and relationships happen. And for me, that's what Rotary is all about. So Rotary is about improving our community. And the way it happens is twofold. It's because we get together with the intent of improving our community, but then it actually improves because you and I get closer together, and we become more aligned because we've both said service to our community is important. And I think that's what makes Rotary unique. And that's one of the really cool parts of, I think, who and what we are.
I think that combination, that team, that it takes more. You can do so much more with more than one person. And it doesn't matter who's really leading it as much as you have a common ground of understanding that you want to move forward. And I think that's across the board when you're talking about teams, even in business.
Yeah, I don't consider myself I think there's a couple different ways to lead. And, you can lead from the front and everybody's following you. You can lead from the back and everybody's pushing, or you can lead from the middle. My fear is that with an organization like Rotary, with as big as it is and established as it is, and the rich history of impact that it has in our community, if I tried to get out in front of that and run, I'm going to look up and I'm going to be all alone. And so really saying, hey, let me stand shoulder to shoulder with these great people. I'll be the one to lead the meetings. I'll be the one to recruit volunteers and try and make sure that there's some engagement there. But largely, this club runs itself. And we also have incredible staff. So that also makes a difference relative to a lot of other Rotary clubs around the world. We're blessed to have an incredible executive director, and I get to take all of the credit for all of her incredible work. So
I think you do quite a bit of work yourself, but I can see the team and working hard, especially when you're up front. And people follow, and you do it through demonstration, which we do talk about that with pen leaders. Being sharp with your experience. I mean, you have the experience and understand the nonprofit and that give back to the community. You have the education, and you have this path that you're clear on what you want to do for the year, which is that plan, and then being able to pivot when it doesn't quite work out. I've seen you do that in action.
Well, thank you. I think I don't know why I'd learned to be good at that. Maybe it's because I make the wrong decision the first time and then we've got to pivot. Maybe that's what happens. It's interesting talking about the nonprofit sort of experience coming into this role. Rotary is a business service club. And there's a lot of folks that are in our club, a lot of folks in our community that don't think that the nonprofit sector is a part of that business community. And I think that's a belief that's changing, right? That's a vocabulary that's changing. And I think, I love challenging people when they say things like that, because a lot of the biggest things that we're most proud of, especially in the downtown area, were driven by the nonprofit sector. And I think there's a lot of great that comes out of that. There's a lot of great people that come out of that sector. And the more we can do to push talented individuals into that sector and support them and invest in them like it matters, because it does, that's a good thing. And I think, me bringing this experience into this role, I'm one of the few nonprofit born folks that have led this club. And so I hope during my time, I can bring some unique value to that conversation for our group as we're doing it.
It's apparent to me as I'm a proud member and as I watch that evolve. I think it's really speaks volumes. And even again, we have a company that's for profit, but we do so much work with nonprofit and we are affiliated with nonprofit. And I think it's just important in that service above self. But there's also this understanding, this common ground of understanding. We have different businesses that are involved. And again, I'm going to say we boast, but we have one of the largest clubs. Am I right, in the United States?
Yeah, we are one of the largest clubs in the world. And so I don't know our exact number today. I know that pre-COVID, we were one of the top 10. We lost a lot of members during that time, but we're building back. And so I would expect that we're still probably in the top 20. And so you think little old Toledo, Ohio has one of the 20th largest service clubs in the world. And that speaks to the heart of Toledoans, right? And I think that's part of why it's fun to be in this club. That's why it's fun to be in this role, and why I was crazy enough to say yes 3 years ago. Sure, I know where I'll be in 3 years. Let's do that.
Yeah, you never can predict, but I think that you had a plan, and it's very apparent that the plan and the strength of character is another thing that we talk about too, because you have to have it to be part of this club, this give back, and understand that you are doing this above any kind of self-reflection back or somehow an agenda. What are the challenges? Because the club is so big and because we have such a diversity of minds and thoughts, what's your challenges?
I think the biggest challenge that I've found, and I see so many similarities to this and almost every other role I've had, is that I firmly believe that good ideas come from everywhere. And so when I was working in a school, not just my colleagues on the leadership team had the good ideas, right? Students had really good ideas, and teachers and parents and the facility staff and cafeteria staff and the bus driver has a great idea. And I think being able to keep your ears open for all of those ideas, but also recognizing that I don't have time to keep my ears open. I don't have time to listen to everybody, right? That not everybody gets a say in everything, but to have my door open, to have that where if you come to me, I'll listen, right? I'll give you my full attention, and I want to hear what you like, what you don't like, what you're interested in, what you think we should be doing about this particular issue. But that's tough because, I also have opinions.
Yes.
Right? So I like to say opinions are like elbows. Everybody has two of them. I think that it's challenging, right? How do I really embody service above self when I'm in a role where they say, Kevin, you're the president? And everybody refers to me as Mr. President, which is really uncomfortable. My wife won't call me that. My kids won't call me that. But I think that probably the biggest challenge is how do we really wrap our arms around this group and say, your opinion matters. But there's only so many hours in the day.
I would say, again, as I witness this, and this is why, again, a true pen leader, you have listened to different opinions, even though you may not agree with them, but you are a great listener and an active listener because you engage back and ask questions. And so you may not agree, but you do. I've found that personally just engaging with you.
Thank you.
So I've always respected that. Can you talk a little bit about those top characteristics, especially when you're looking for folks to come into Rotary and to help lead, especially some of these service projects and giving back, because there's travel that's involved in some of that. Can you speak to that?
I think passion and desire rules over everything else, right? So whether I'm hiring for a position in my company, or I'm looking for someone to go have a beer with, or I'm looking for someone to be a future Rotarian, if their compass is pointing in the right direction, we're going to get there. Rotary used to be a place where you had to be a senior leader in your company to join the club. That's not the case today, and that's not the case for Rotary clubs all across the world. That dynamic is shifting, and it should have shifted. It should be shifting. But what I like to say is I really am interested in the answer to two questions. Question number one, are you interested in serving the community before you serve yourself?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Question number two, do you have the ability or authority to speak on behalf of your company's commitment to that as well? And if the answer to both of those questions is yes, I think you'd be a great Rotarian. Again, that could be a brand new employee that is fresh out of college, still trying to find their way in the company, but their boss says, I'd love for you to represent us in Rotary, and you've demonstrated commitment to this. Well, that's perfect. Because I don't want to be a club that is 320 members big. Mm-hmm. I want to be a club that's 320 businesses big. And I want us bringing our communities to the work we do with Rotary, not just showing up for ourselves, right? I want to bring my neighbors with me to a service project. I want to bring my colleagues and my clients with me to a service project. I think when that happens, we are the best version of ourselves as a club, and we are doing the best work we can in the community.
I think that the role of being able to influence and just encourage others, because people are watching. They're like, well, what is Rotary doing? What is it? How are they impacting the communities that they're in? And I get questions like that because I've been a Rotarian for a few years now, and it changes every year because the projects change. And then there's also the international component. You get your magazine, your Rotarian magazine at home, and you're like, wow, the impact when you pull all of those resources, all those companies, individuals representing and have the power, the empowerment to make decisions. You do so much together.
Yeah. I think I don't even regularly take stock the true impact that Rotary has across the globe because I spend so much time and so much focus on Toledo. It's interesting. I think one of the challenges that we have, because you say people asking, well, what does Rotary do? Well, we're one of only a handful of organizations in Northwest Ohio that give out as much money as we do, that serve as much as we do. But that service above self mentality has us thinking that we shouldn't talk about it, that we shouldn't brag about it, that we shouldn't reach out to the media every time we write a check for $10,000 to an organization. And the reality is we do that 30 times a year. We should be talking about all 30 of them. And not just for us, but also that's a project that's really important that I want the community to know about. But we also should be proud, having a history, having a foundation that allows us to do those things. And that would attract more people that go, well, that's cool. I want to be a part of that. Come join the family. Let's do it. And so I think it's that balance of we're so focused on service that sometimes it's not just service above self. Sometimes it's service despite self. And that's not the same thing.
I agree with you. I can think of a few examples of that. And we have entrepreneurs who are wondering, they're trying to balance life. And we had a prior podcast where we talked about not balancing work life, but integrating it, because sometimes you just don't turn it off. You're always thinking about, especially as an entrepreneur, that's an idea. And you could be having dinner with the family and then all of a sudden you see something. So it's an integration. I don't know how you turn it off. It's just, and I had someone on about serial entrepreneurship. It's always a new idea. How do you leverage that to best serve the communities around you? How do you harness that energy?
So for me, entrepreneurship is not about running a business or starting a business. Entrepreneurship is, and it's not even about solving problems. Entrepreneurship is really about scaling solutions. And that piece is really hard, right? It's when you look at the different steps of entrepreneurship, right? The way I like to define it, the way I like to teach middle school kids about what entrepreneurship is to say that step one is identifying a problem. We got a lot of people that are really good at step one, right? But they don't go on to step two, which is develop a solution. Mm-hmm. And, and maybe it's step two is like discover the solution. Step three is develop the solution, right? So I've got people that do step one, they see a problem and they're like, somebody should do this. Well, step three is you do it, go do it. But the real challenge in entrepreneurship is that step four, which is now let's scale that thing that we did to solve that problem, because we're not the only one that experiences that. So how do we scale that? And so I think that scale mentality is what I'm trying to bring to my time in leadership, and not just this year as president, but the last 6 years serving as a board member, is how do we develop solutions? How do we develop processes and practices that we can scale and that we can pilot test something here in Toledo? Maybe the Ann Arbor Club is trying. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing for me is I'm seeing that happen, right? So we had our first Service Above Self Day, where we went out and we served the community instead of having our regular meeting. And now Ann Arbor is talking about doing that.
It's fantastic. That's leading by example.
And so we're going to see, our club a number of years ago struck a partnership with 20 Under 40, where the 20 honorees all receive an honorary Rotary membership for about a year and a half after they're recognized. So it's the rest of that year and all of the following. Well, now there's other clubs around the country that are partnering with their young business professional awards systems to say, yeah, let's partner. Let's bring these award-winning, talented young professionals into our club. And it's really fueling a lot of energy into clubs that at the national level, when we're critical of ourselves, we say Rotary is seen as male, pale, and stale. Mm. And that's not who we are.
No.
That's not who we want to be, and it's certainly not where we're going.
And again, from a personal experience, it doesn't reflect that anymore. And it's very inclusive.
I saw an article a few years ago that I sent to a handful of other folks in Rotary, and I said, this is the challenge that we face in Toledo Rotary. And it was an article about Major League Baseball and how Major League Baseball has prioritized history over innovation. Mm. And you cannot do one and completely ignore the other, right? If all you worry about is history, you're going to wake up and there's no present for you anymore. If all you focus on is innovation, there's a good chance that you look up and you're not where you were supposed to be, not doing the thing that the community, whatever it is, needs you doing. And so it's that balance of how do we leverage the history, but also push innovation? Mm-hmm. Because the history is comfortable, right? It's easy to say, it's easy to live in the past. It's easy to say, this has always worked for us or this always hasn't. It's really hard to take chances and be innovative. And I think that's the piece that, if we can do both of those things, if we can live in that middle ground where we're taking risks, but we're taking them with our foundation, we're taking them with our history, it's great.
You can move a mountain.
Yep, that's right.
That's fantastic. Well, I can't thank you enough for all of those pearls of wisdom and then just those experiences that you're having. I can't thank you enough, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. This is a great podcast.
Thank you.
Maybe not this episode, but the whole concept is great.
This episode is great. And I appreciate your podcast too. It's fun. It's fun. 419. Love it. So, as a note to my listeners, it's so important to have your feedback as well. Please don't hesitate to send comments or thoughts or suggestions into info@mazeassociatesltd.com. And don't forget to like and listen and share it. So until next time.
The Pen Leader podcast is hosted by Dr. Shanda Gore and brought to you by Maze & Associates Ltd., creating customized solutions for growth in the areas of leadership development, strategic planning, and culture building. Find out more at www.mazeassociatesltd.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Pen Leader podcast and share with others.